All right, cool. We're at 5:05. We can get started soon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for taking your time here to join us for an AMA with Celia Hodent. I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies back in April. I'm also a designer at Electronic Arts and have been following Celia's work for a long time as I was making my first game, and it helped me a lot as well. And for those of you new to Design Buddies is a large design community I founded back in April. So we have a lot of free events, resources, mentorship. We even have a game jam coming up tomorrow as well. And some of our organizers are in here in the room with us. So make sure to join us there as well. And with that, I'll hand it off to Pat.
Hey everyone, I'm Pat, and I'm here to introduce Celia Hodent. She's an expert and independent consultant in games user experience and applied cognitive science. She has a PhD in psychology from the University of Paris-Sorbonne and is the author of The Gamer's Brain, How Neuroscience and UX Can Impact Video Game Design, and the newly released The Psychology of Video Games. She's also the GDC Summit Chair and advisor for the GDC UX Summit, and the UX Summit that happened last week. Previously, she was a part of Ubisoft Montreal, LucasArts, and Epic Games as the UX director, and overall contributed to more than 10 years of user experience for games. Her latest endeavor is Ethical Games, an initiative with academics and game developers to develop a code of ethics for the video game industry. And you have the floor now, Celia.
Again, sorry. There's some noise just starting right now next to
Oh,
me, so I couldn't hear what you're saying.
oh,
What was what was the question?
you have the floor now.
I have the floor. Hi
Yeah,
everyone. I'm
okay.
really glad that you're here. I gave a talk at Design Buddies. When was that? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks
And
ago.
yeah, and that was really fun, and there were a lot of questions, and then a lot of people contacted me on LinkedIn, but it was I mean I it was hard for me to answer to everyone because there were too many messages. So I thought it could be nice to do an MAA, and so we saw with Grace and Pat to organize that. So I'm happy to be here and to hopefully answer all your questions.
Yeah, so we looked at a couple of the questions that were submitted, and we're going to go with a section of learning more about you. So this first question is, if you could go back 10 years, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I always dread these questions because I never know what to say. Um, I mean, it's really hard because in hindsight, everything looks clearer than when you're doing the thing. And ultimately, I don't know if I had taken another path, where would I be today? So it's always very difficult to answer this question. But the thing I would probably tell myself, and I actually already answered that question in another MAA, is I would probably tell myself that meritocracy is bullshit. This is that thing that we always push ourselves to be the best and to always make the best out of it and work and do all these things. But we have to keep in mind that it's not always fruitful, and it also depends on who you are. There are glass ceiling, and we know that there's discrimination out there, and ultimately it's not necessarily the best people that are getting the jobs or the promotion or the laurels or the rewards or stuff like that. So that's probably what I would tell myself, so that I would just maybe adjust my expectations and understand a little bit better that I'm white, so at least I have that going for me. But of course, the more you marginalize, the harder it is for you to get there, and also the more marginalized, the more difficult it is to overcome a failure. We're all going to fail. We're all going to make mistakes. That's part of the deal. But the problem is that some people, as soon as they make a mistake, it's really hard to get over it. So that's the thing we need to keep in mind, and I think it's really important to understand that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, yes, I'm just
No,
just
if
telling you.
anything, it's really refreshing to hear that from someone from someone who's basically been in the industry for a long time. So to be honest, it's very encouraging to hear that. So thank you.
I don't know if it's encouraging, but it is what it is.
Encouraging that people recognize it and that
Yeah.
if you're a minority, you're not alone. People know it's a problem. And
Yeah, so more people understand that's a problem, but not everyone. And in game industry, we still have a lot of problems in terms of diversity and inclusion. But keep in mind that even if it's hard, and even if you fail, and even if you feel that the imposter syndrome, understand that we all feel it. Like even I feel it, and I know that I hate to admit it, but I know that it helps people to, even because I have some experience and expertise. So I feel it also. So it's okay. It's part of the process. It should not prevent you from keep pushing. But it's also important to understand that, failure doesn't have the same impact on everybody else. And so if you're from a marginalized group and a minority, reach out to other people, and we need to help each other out, because that's going to be really important.
Okay. I was looking in the chat and someone was asking for advice, but I think you kind of answered that by just supporting each other, correct?
Yeah, supporting each other, and make sure to reach out to, there's a lot of different groups, and a lot of people want to help each other out. There's a lot of community work, and there's a lot of solidarity. So if you go on the website ethicalgames.org, which is more about ethics in the game industry, but there's a big part about how we can make games more inclusive, including in terms of our workforce. And you have a page that says more, and on the more page you would actually see a list of orgs that are here to help out, and have that solidarity and community sense with a lot of different marginalized groups. And so you will have a bunch of lists in there, and so reach out to these people, find a mentor, and just network, and there's a lot of people out there who want to help. So do reach out to these people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stay alone, because you're not alone. You just need to connect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely feel like the design community, especially game UX and games and design in general, is like super inclusive. Before I was a little afraid, but once I joining multiple communities and starting design buddies, I realized how friendly and approachable many people are. So strongly encourage all of you to also network with each other and reach out and chat in design buddies, because so many people want to help, and don't feel intimidated by people as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. And kudos to you to have created the community. It's really important.
Yeah, and thank you so much to everyone for being part of it. It wouldn't be design buddies without all of you. So thank you all. Yeah. And so me and Pat will be kind of exchanging questions, and around the same time, we'll be kind of reading off live questions from the chat. If you do want to come on camera, for everyone in the audience, raise your hand, and we will be picking people who raise their hand, but also reading off questions from the chat, and also reading off the questions you all submitted. And for the About Celia section, our next question we have submitted is, which projects are you most proud of working on? Could be anything related to game UX, related to not, related to life, anything.
Oh, relate to life. Okay. Okay, let's start with let's talk about video games. I am pretty proud of Fortnite, because it was a very, very complex game. There's a lot of systems. So I work mostly on the game itself, and so initially it was mainly the save the world mode, and so there are a lot of systems, and there were a lot of things to get right. And there's also a lot of diversity and the representation of characters, and so I'm proud of that. And more recently, I'm proud. I'm happy that I'm trying to push, at my level on ethics in the game industry, because I need it. I think it's really, really needed. And overall, I'm in my life, I'm proud, sort of. There's it's not there's always ups and downs, say that, and I failed many times, and sometimes I was not always true to myself, but overall I'm proud, and I'm trying to stay on track with what I want to be, and the values that are dear to my heart. I hope that answers pretty much everything.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. All right, so no one raised their hand. Okay, cool. I guess, Pat, did you want to go with the next one? Sorry, people are just randomly DMing me. Oh, Pat, you're muted? Oh my gosh.
Oh no, fire.
I muted myself and it says the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. And I'm like, wait, I'm co-host.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You should be
Okay.
co-host now.
Yeah, I'm like, oh gosh, we love technical difficulties, human mistakes. Let's see. Our next question is about working on games UX. So what's your favorite part about working on a games UX? Like it could be like the research or like a specific part of it, or even like a favorite story involving games UX.
This is really tough because there's so many stories, and so it's really hard to just pick one. I would say that it really depends on what's going on. So I love when we're just having a hard time finding a solution to a problem, and then we, iteration after iteration after iteration, and then finally we find the solution. So I really often talk about the weak point in Fortnite, because that was really like an ongoing it was like a running joke, like why the hell don't people see or use the weak point in Fortnite? So when you start harvesting, there's a weak point appearing and you're supposed to aim at it to harvest faster. And that thing was such a running joke for years. I was trying to make people to understand that thing without being too much in your face and say, oh, aim at this thing. So once we finally made it work, that's super. That's a moment when we're all in the lab and we're watching, and then finally it works, and then people are using it, and we all cheer and just high five. That's a moment that's really fun. But most of the time it's more tears. So, oh my god, this is not working. But every now and then, we have these moments where we celebrate the success, and for something that we took a long time to overcome. So I would say that that's my favorite moment, have that teamwork and get there finally after all these efforts. I mean, we have a lot of quick wins and little successes, but the ones when it was really hard and we tried many things to make it work, and finally we find the way to make it work. That's really an epiphany moment that I really love.
Yeah, that's awesome. It always feels so good, especially like when you're working on something for so long, there's so many stakes in hand, and finally just something clicks. And it feels like everything has paid off then. Yeah, cool. And okay, so no questions in the chat yet. So
there is one from Claudia. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful do your days at work get in average? But I feel like it's really based on like what's currently happening. So it's from a case by case.
Yeah, so today it's much less stressful than it was when I was working directly, at a studio. And that's the thing I really love about my daily job. So today I'm a bit stressed because I have a deadline, and after finishing up with you, I have to finish a UX evaluation for a game, and to record 2 talks. So I'm a bit stressed, but just to finish all the things I need to do. I don't have the level of stress that I had before. When you're really in the trenches with a team and there's so much pressure and we don't know if we're going to figure it out, and there's politics also going on, and it's really hard. And so that level of stress really drastically lowered when I started to become a consultant. And that's the thing I really appreciate about my life today is I'm much more. So sure, I work hard. And so, I'm stressed because it's a lot of work, but I'm not stressed because I don't feel that I have that glass ceiling anymore. I don't feel that I have to convince people too much, because people call me when they're already convinced about, I can help them out. So that's really much better in terms of stress today as compared to before. So today in terms of bad stress, I would say it's 1. It's really good. I love my job today. It's really a dream job.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just started my career, like my full-time job, like last Monday, and I have yet to experience a lot of the corporate aspects and everything like that as well.
Yeah, well, you tell me about it when you experience it. You'll see. It's interesting.
I see a lot more questions coming in now. Grace, do you want to choose?
Yeah, I guess so. So Micah asked the next question on a more positive note, moving away from stress. What games are you playing right now, and what are your all-time favorite games, and what makes them your favorite game?
That's a very hard question. So right now, I've been playing a lot of Brawl Stars just because I've been really, really busy. And so that's a game you can play very quickly. You can just like play a few rounds. And then it's helping just to have some fun for just like 10 minutes and then go back to work. But mostly I'm more of a console gamer today. I still play a little bit on PC, but I love when I really have the time, which hasn't happened in the past 3 weeks, but I love to wind down and have a glass of wine and just like launch a game and like slouch on my couch and play on console. So recently what I've been playing, I'm a bit late. So I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima. What else have I been playing? And what I sometimes I test games that are coming out, and sometimes I play for a little bit, and then if it's a big game like an RPG, typically I don't know if I'll ever be able to finish Ghost. But I try to play a little bit and really get a good sense of it. And I prefer to move on to another game so I can stay current. But these are the latest game I'm trying to think of. Is there any? There's probably other games that I've been playing, but it's just that's the thing with all the things that I'm doing, and I'm switching gears all the time, and also testing games for work, and I cannot talk about these games, so I'm trying to think about published games I can talk about. But these are the two main that I've been playing lately. I've been playing Destiny 2 also recently.
Nice. Cool. We have a lot of questions coming in, so we'll try our best to get to as many as we can, and also answering questions that we all submitted. If you submit a question, ping it in the chat again as well, because we're trying to get through as much as we can. And Pat can choose the next one.
Okay. Let's see here. This one is interesting. If you weren't in games UX, what would you want to do?
Rockstar.
Ooh, nice.
This is actually what I started to do. I was lead singer and guitarist in a rock band, and if that worked out, I would be touring. Well, not today. that would have been the thing that I would have loved to be doing. So
nice.
Maybe one day I'll get back to that, but it's a lot of work, of course, because you need to rehearse a lot all the time. But that's the thing that I really love, like music and performing on stage. That's for music, more like I prefer to perform something that is rehearsed or like a how can I say that, like a show rather than a like speaking. I mean, speaking now I got used to it, but I wasn't really not comfortable at the beginning. But I love to put on a show.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I love like rock music as well. I secretly love like emo screamo music. So.
Why secretly?
You're
allowed.
Yeah. I'm a huge metal fan and rock fan myself, so I'm just like, that was really cool to hear. That's something new to me, so I'm just like, oh, wow.
Well, there you go. So all things you probably don't know about me, but yeah, I had different lives.
Yeah, same.
And, aspiring rock star was one of that, but I didn't succeed in that one.
Nice. Nice that you also really like rock music too. And so our next question comes from Ahmed, and he asks about collaboration. Like, how often and in what ways do you collaborate with other teams and departments when working on a game? Okay,
so when I was hired in a company, collaboration is really, really key. Without collaboration, you don't do much. So really the starting point when you start working in UX, you need to go into the trenches with the core team and try to understand what we're trying to accomplish, try to understand the hurdles that they're getting, try to understand their intentions so that you can help them out and help them accomplish their goals. So without collaboration, it's nothing. I mean, you don't do anything. You can just like, yay, hey, I did an evaluation of your game. Like, here are all the things, the hundreds of things that are not working out. You fix this, and this is not working out. It's the first step is really building trust with the team. And so it's really all collaboration, like make sure like we all feel that we're on the same boat. So that's really, really key in my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely building trust is like the foundation of any sort of team effort or any group effort.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm trying to look through the questions, but I'm gonna
We're
go.
trying to answer fast so we can get more questions.
Yeah,
We have a
yeah,
lot that submitted too. Feel free to jump back and forth between the chat and the submitted ones. And people
yeah.
want to raise their hand, raise your hand if you want to come
Mhm.
up the stage.
Yeah. If anything, there's one about VR, and I'm personally interested in this too. Are you interested in VR? And what are some new UX challenges that you think will come out of developing VR games that we don't see in the industry now? And thank you, Kat, for this question.
So I am intellectually interested in VR. The problem is I get quite a bit simulation sick, um, for a real reason, because I'm not getting motion sick. So I've been doing I can go on rides, and I did skydiving and stuff like that, and I'm fine. But VR, it's like, even if it's well done, I get dizzy, or I get dizzy when I take it off. So it gets hard for me to stay a long time in VR. But so that's one of the challenges that we need to overcome in VR, making sure that people don't get sick. And of course, it's there's I mean, the UX practices are the same, but we have different constraints in VR than in other platforms. So, for example, we don't control at all the camera, because it's the person like in their head that control the camera. So if they're looking here, but there's something going on here, then they might not see it. So we need to find ways to draw attention all the time, or to find ways like algorithm that we just like wait until the person is like looking at the thing so that something happens. So that's going to be it's quite important. Also, make sure that people can move around without being sick. Make sure, like if that's an experience that there's you're standing, we need to take into height people's heights into account, because it's your own body that is the avatar in the game. So in a traditional game, the avatar is the avatar. It's got a different specific height. And that's really important for level designers to decide, how tall things are. But in VR, you are, it's depending on your own height. So there is also that challenge. There's a challenge that you can't really easily have an overlay like a HUD in VR, because that makes people sick. So you need to, even more so than in traditional games, you need to look more into diegetic UI. So UI is part of the environment. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting challenges. So intellectually, I found it really interesting. VR is really interesting, but it's still there's still a lot of things to overcome. The great part of VR is that you're fully immersed, nearly fully immersed with all your senses. So a lot of time people talk about, oh, they're super immersed in a game. But in psychology, when we talk about immersion, it's really in the sensory part. So you're going to be way more immersed in VR than if you play a game on your Apple Watch, for example.
Mhm.
But no matter the sensory immersion, you can feel a sense of presence or not in the game. And typically when we say, oh, I'm super immersed in that game, and that game's super immersive, typically we refer to actually presence. And so you can feel present in a game because, on your phone, you're playing, and whatever you're doing, the characters are reacting to what you're doing, and the world is changing with what you do. So you feel really present in the world narratively, or you feel present with the extension of your senses. And sometimes in VR, you can be fully immersed, but don't not feel a sense of presence. Let's say you encounter an NPC and you start talking to that NPC, and that NPC is not making eye contact with you. And so this is when you're immersed, but you might not feel a sense of presence because it feels weird. So there's a lot of different challenges. Super interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I used to make VR games. It was actually my first game I made. There's so many constraints to consider. And there's actually this book I found on my bookshelf called VR UX.
Yeah.
It's really short. It's not very long.
Oh, that's a new one, because there's also a big a longer book about. Yeah, that's not the one that I know of. There's another book about VR. I actually need to read it because I haven't read it yet. But there's a big. I think there's a bigger one that's older. Is this one new?
This one, I think I got it. It's by Casey Fictum, and I got it back in 2017, 2018.
Okay.
It helped me a lot in like just understanding their overall constraints and human body and psychology with designing VR games. So also recommend this to anyone interested in doing VR.
Yeah, VR is hard.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Making games is hard overall, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so many interesting questions here. I'm trying to pick one that kind of goes along with the flow, but while taking account into everybody's interests and stuff. And since VR is a trend, I guess like what kind of trends do you see upcoming in gaming industry, and what do you think the game industry needs more of?
It needs more diversity, and the trend that is, I think we're heading more into metaverse kind of things. So, of course, it's spearheaded by Epic, and if you look at Fortnite, it's not just a game anymore. It's a whole environment, and when you enter Fortnite, you can, of course, play a game, but you can also just chat with friends, watch a movie, listen to music, like watch a concert. So they're building that sort of metaverse that Tim Sweeney refers to fairly often in his talks. And the idea is you have a virtual space where you can come into from any platform. So that's already a little bit what's happening with Fortnite. You can join through your phone or through console or through computer, your PC. And so I think there's a lot of games that are going to try to head that way. Have that virtual space where you can do many things. So there's that, and yeah, the other trend. I mean, I want to say robotics also at some point is going to be interesting, that how robotics, we're going to get more robots in our world, and how they're going to be integrated into our gaming practices. It's still not super clear on what's going to happen there. But right now, what's clear is more the metaverse.
Yeah, nice.
Okay. That's like the first time I heard metaverse too, so I'm just like,
oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
look it
same.
up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm biased because I come from Epic, and there was a lot of discussions around that. But if you watch any of Tim Sweeney's talks, like recently, he talks a lot about that. So it's definitely what they're trying to accomplish with Fortnite, I would say.
Oh gosh, going into what we need more of, I'm also curious of like what games in your opinion have the best UX and why?
Yeah, so that's a great question, but it's also hard to answer because there's no perfect game, so there's no perfect UX. And at the end of the day, UX is the experience that users have, and it lies in the eye of the beholder. So that's going to be very subjective, but of course we try to offer the best experience to the most users. Okay, so in console and in PC, it's often very difficult. Because it's games that are deep and with a lot of systems. It's always difficult to make it a great UX because there's so many things to learn to players. I'm trying to think of what was that game that I played recently? It was like, oh yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I forgot. But if you look at on mobile, like Supercell is pretty praised for their UX. They're pretty good at really polishing very carefully all their UI and their environment and character design, and they really spend time to explain stuff to players. So their onboarding are typically pretty long, but well done. But I feel I had a game that I played on console recently that I thought was pretty good because well, I want to say yeah, that's a long time. It's an old game, but Concrete Genie was a pretty good game in terms of onboarding and user experience. There's a lot of good things about that game, but yeah, so then you have like companies that are really good at that. So Nintendo is a company that's going to come very often because they're really good at sacrificing all the things that they don't want friction from, so that really they can really concentrate on the experience that they want to offer. They really don't hesitate to cut things down and to offer, like to be generous to the player outside of where they want to challenge them. So they're pretty good at that, and not many companies are able to do that, because cutting and sacrificing, I don't know, maybe it could be like art direction, and then making things like super obvious for players because this is not where we want to challenge players. It's something that is actually pretty hard to do. So Nintendo is pretty good at that. Trying to think of more. I should have put my list down because I thought, I had the question earlier and I thought of it, and now, because at the end of the day, I'm tired, I'm going blank. But there are a lot of games that are doing a lot of interesting things. Just trying, maybe it's going to come back to me, but there's a console game also that I played recently. But anytime the game is really taking the time to onboard players and also polishing their all the sounds and feedback, are typically games that offer a better UX.
Okay.
Heard you say Supercell. I used to be super fan of Heyday. I played it every day when I woke up in the morning. So great UX for that game as well. Heyday is a great example of something that really hooks the user in, but also onboards the user really well. Not sponsored. I just love that game as a good example too. And next question, I see Andre and Wesley raise their hand, and Andre appears first on my list. So let me unmute.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm a UX designer, have been a designer for about 10 years, and I'm transitioning to UX product design. Now there is a gaming company nearby where I live, and I'd love to, they have a position open for a UX designer. What are some of the attributes I should kind of show, especially when I'm trying to connect with a company like that?
Yep.
To show that I have UX chops, but I know it's not gaming, it's mostly applications in a way.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's totally fine, because we need a lot of UX designers in the game industry, and we don't have enough. So we tend to hire a lot of people outside of the game industry. So that's totally fine. The only thing is you need to. So it depends on what game we're talking about. It's if it's a super casual game, the company that's making casual games, it's not as critical as if, let's say, you're applying for, let's say, I'm going to say something wild, let's say Riot, and it's to work on League of Legends. That's typically a game that has a lot of systems, that's pretty deep, and so for that sort of games, you really need to have a deep understanding of these sort of genre, not necessarily be a fan of them, but really understand and have a good grasp of all the different systems that need to be conveyed as intuitively as possible to players. So that would be something that you really need to put forward, because in any case, you're going to need to express complicated systems to players. So I'm guessing you're already doing that at your job. But depending on what sort of games they're making, you might need to just demonstrate that you understand these games, and you don't need to say I love these games, but you need to show that you understand the mechanics and the system design of these games, so that you can do a good job collaborating with game designers, because like we said earlier, collaboration is key. And now, I can go on, because there's a lot of things you need to take into account. I would recommend you to read the blog post that I wrote a few months back, because I got a lot of these questions. So I wrote a very long blog post that really goes step by step, explaining what you need to do on your resume, interview process, and all of that. So I would recommend you to read it, because it's pretty long. So it's on my webpage. You go celiahodent.com. It's the latest blog post that I wrote, so it's going to come up first. So you find that all the information there.
I just put the link in the chat, so you feel free to click on it if you're curious about that. And so, Grace, we're going to ask Wesley for their question.
Yeah, so Oh, I have more people raising their hand. We also have some really great questions that were submitted. So we're going to call on Wesley and then have some questions that are submitted and call on Mary next. So mute. Definitely good luck on everyone on your job search. I understand how hard it is, but the feeling is only temporary and you got this and it will be over eventually. It'll make you stronger in the process. And always ask for feedback after interviews.
Yes.
That's a good tip. That's how you improve. And that's how you stand out to other companies, because usually people don't ask for feedback, but by asking for feedback, like you're showing to the other person that you want to improve, so they'll remember you. And their feedback will also help you prepare for your interview again if you want to interview with the same company or in the future as well.
Yeah,
So
if anything, see it as a networking opportunity and not just only a job opportunity, because those people their job is to help people get jobs, like especially recruiters. If you're on the good side of them, they will help you.
Yeah, and the game industry is pretty small, relatively speaking, and so it's that's the reason why spending time on networking is really important, because I met most of the jobs I got in the game industry was because I knew someone and we met at some point, and that person read an article that I wrote or saw a presentation that I did, and so that it's a lot working that way in the game industry.
And sometimes rejections just mean you're not like, you don't have the correct skill set. You could be like a great designer, but they could be looking for someone more experienced in mobile and stuff. So don't be afraid of that. Don't let that get you down for anyone struggling in job search. And with that, we'll turn it to Wesley.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi. Well, first I wanted to say, Celia, it's an honor to be able to chat with you. I think a few years ago when I followed your work at Epic, that was like the main like driving catalyst for me getting into my UX career. I might have met you like for a minute. I live in North Carolina. I might have met you at Epic. I don't remember. But anyways, that was before my career. And so my question is kind of two parts. The first part is just, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more of like an insight on what it means to be a UX consultant versus like a UX designer or researcher for like a 9 to 5. And following that, when you start consulting for say like a new client or a new project, can you share a little bit on how you prioritize the work and maybe like the vertical slice, or how much like commitment and like effort to certain aspects of the project you're going to be dedicating? Yeah.
So I'm going to try to answer the best way I can. But the problem is I'm not myself a UX designer. And as a consultant, I can't really do UX research because I need a lab, but I don't have a lab. So now I do a lot of advice, and I do a lot of training sessions, and I do a lot of expert evaluation of the game. I do less part of, I don't spend as much time today at solving problems with the team and iterate on it and guide them through their design process, which I miss a little bit. But there's less stress with it. So that's the main difference. We talked about that earlier. And in my previous jobs, I worked a little, so I never worked as a UX designer because again, I'm not a designer. I worked a little bit as a UX researcher because my background is in academia. So I did academic research actually. So it was easy to transition, well, easy, you have to adjust a little bit, but it was easier to transition to UX research. So in UX research, it's really the thing is you have to be really useful to the team. So you have to understand what they're trying to accomplish, but you also need to stand back so you're not getting too biased, and you don't want to stay too close to the project because humans are biased and are biased, and you want to make sure that you stay as objective as you can. So on a daily basis, it's a lot of making sure you can get the feedback as fast as possible to the team, and that you can understand their priorities, so you're not spending too much time explaining something that they don't care because they're going to redo the whole system in a month, for example. So it's really important to stay up to date, and that a thing that later in my career I did more a UX strategy position, which is what I was doing at Epic. So yes, I did some research at the beginning before hiring my team, because I was a UX team of one at the beginning. But then once my team was hired, then I was doing more UX strategy. So I was here to make sure that we had all the processes in place. And this is when partnering with a producer. So that was Heather Chandler on Fortnite. And we did a talk at GDC about that, so you can find it. I think this one is 2017. So it's on YouTube today. So even if you don't have the GDC Vault, you can see it. Or it's also, the transcript is also on my website. And so make sure that we have a proper pipeline to make sure that we have actionable after the research, and make sure that we have the proper people that are hired, and that we can have, a trust relationship. That was more part of what I was doing. So it was more strategy rather than research or design. And so today it's less that. So I have less of that team effort, and I do less problem solving at a studio level, and it's more counseling people and giving advice, and have a snapshot at some point. And sometimes I'm getting hired either to help on the onboarding of a game in development, or just train the teams on understanding better what UX is, and help them have a common vocabulary, because that's really important to all speak the same language. So it's more things like these. So it's more like a snap in and out. It's rare that I follow. It happens, but it's rare that I follow a project on the long term. So it's less stress, because after I'm out, and I don't care if they don't listen to me when I'm out, which was not the same when I was on 9 to 5, because then you want to make sure that we keep moving. So that's the pro of that, is less stress, and also less politics. The con is I have less of that team spirit and collaboration and following a project and see it grow, which was pretty exciting. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, it's hard to cover everything, but I hope that I did not too bad a job.
No, that was great. That was really insightful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Wesley, for your question. I see a question that a lot of people also wanted to ask. So this is from Anushka. How do you keep the conversation going on LinkedIn when you haven't really met them, but are really interested in connecting?
Yeah. So you have to realize that it's, for some folks, it's getting, like me today, it's getting really complicated for me to answer people's question on LinkedIn. And it's partly because of a shit UX, because LinkedIn doesn't have a good UX. And so sometimes I see, at some point I was just like answering questions that I was receiving on LinkedIn in batches. And it's really, really complicated, because as soon as you answer a question, then the message like goes away. And then you need to find out where you were to go through all your list, or you need to remember to open a new screen. It's just like, you have to find ways to make it work. And it's just too much work to go through that. And there's no easy way to filter your messages. So it's really, really hard. So I would recommend, if you try to network. So of course, not everybody is overwhelmed by LinkedIn by the way I am today. So first of all, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, put a message in there. It's really important. And also, before reaching out on LinkedIn, make sure that your name and what you're doing, what you're aspiring for to do is clear. Because many times I see people like, I'm a student at whatever university, but that's not really telling me why you're interested in UX. So if I see a student in HCI at whatever university, then I have a better understanding of why that person is reaching out to me. Then make sure that you add a message. Say, hey, I saw you at Design Buddies. Really interesting. I have this question. But also, before asking your question, make sure. So that happens to me a lot today. A lot of people asking me tips to get into the game industry. And I'm like, it's like literally the first blog post on my website. So if you're asking me that question, I have a good idea that you actually did not look my website and you did not do your research before. And so why would I spend some time, which I don't have today, if you did not spend the time to research a little bit before reaching out to me? So this would be my second big advice. Research the person and look at what that person was already gave away, and look at what they did, like the talks they did. Do they have a blog? What are their writings? Try to find stuff out, and then if through that material you don't find the answer to your question, then contact that person. Say, hey, I watched whatever your talk, and I'm trying to find an answer to that question, and I couldn't find it out. I know that you're super busy, and it's okay if you can't answer, but if you have the time, I would really appreciate appreciate if you could answer blah. So I know in LinkedIn you can't write too much, which is good because then it keeps things short. So keep that in mind. So sometimes also I connect with people on LinkedIn and then I have like literally like a massive block of text. And then I'm like, sometimes I want to look into it and I'm like, I just really don't have the time. And so make sure to be straight to the point. When you reach out to people. So do your research, make sure that your profile is clear, like who you are or what you're aspiring for. Do the research of the person you're interested in. When you contact that person, make sure to add a message, not just, hey, I'd like to contact you or I'd like to connect with you. Just explain why you're interested in what you watch or why, more specifically you want to connect. And then if you do have a question for that person, make sure that that person did not answer the question in different platforms. And so then you can really ask your question saying, well, I watched this and that, and this would be my additional question if you have the time. And ask your question, but be mindful that that person might not have the time. And then, wait for a month. And if you don't get an answer, poke that person again and, hey, sorry, I don't mean to be pushy or anything. Just wondering if you got a chance to read that. If you didn't, that's fine. But if I would really love to know more about X, Y, and Z. And then if that person still doesn't answer, then let it be. But do try. And sometimes I really, and I feel bad about it. Sometimes I don't answer, not because I don't want to, but because at that moment I'm really, really underwater. And so a month after, if I want to get back to my messages, I mean, that message is really deep inside. So that's the reason why you should poke that person again after a month or two. But, don't be too pushy as well. I hope that helps.
I resonate with everything you said because I get a ton of messages as well. A ton of people asking me the same thing. A ton of people just saying hi, and I'm just like, hi. And I don't even respond.
Yeah, don't do that.
I don't even know. Yeah, don't, please do not just send people hi, everybody. Because context is super, super important when you're reaching out to someone, especially if you're asking for their time in terms of like making them or like asking them to like answer your question or hopping on a call. Really make sure you take the time to do the research as well beforehand for everybody. And this goes for anyone, and be really clear. So with that said, we're going to go with Mary, and then we're going to take some questions from the submitted form and then go to Ashley, and hopefully we have some time. So yeah.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Time flies. So even if you try to answer all the questions, there's still not enough time. It's just frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, can you guys hear me? I don't know if my camera.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I read today your UX of onboarding and player engagement, both of the presentations, and I thought they were so cool. I went to your Twitter and I saw this was happening tonight, so this is really awesome.
Sweet.
I was wondering if you have any advice for someone who wants to conduct cognitive psychology research on memory specifically and its relationship to user experience in video games.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question. So if you want to conduct research, do you mean academic research? Are you muted now? Sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, academic research or more like research on the field, like while you're working like for a company.
So the trick is when you work for a company, it's really rare that we get to do exploratory questions like these because we just don't have the time. The game industry is pretty fast-paced, and so we typically don't have the time to do that. So it's either we're going to partner with a lab, or sometimes if we have exploratory questions with students, like I'm thinking Full Sail, because it's a school in Florida and they have a lab, so that makes it easy. Or it's partnering with students at North Carolina State University because they have a major and even a PhD in human factor psychology. So you have students there that are interested, and that's typically when you can do the research. It's rare that as a person part of a company in the game industry that we get to do that sort of research. It can happen, but it's extremely rare. So if this is what you're interested in, I would recommend you to go look into academic research and to join a university when they have a major in human factor psychology. So there's a few of these you can look into. So that's the thing. I don't have a list of because that's also because I'm not American, I'm French, and so I don't necessarily have a good mental model of all the universities here. But NCSU is one. You can look into DigiPen. You have Rochester University in New York. You have Carnegie Mellon. So there's and also of course I'm in California, and I was about to forget about what's the name of that? It's Saladin's SCU. Anyway, so the game section, multimedia section, they also have a lab and they can conduct research. So if this is what you're interested in, that's probably where you can do that.
Thank you.
So I think it's USC in California versus Southern California.
USC, that's the thing. I was trying to put the letters.
No worries. I go to SCU and people always both of letters.
That doesn't sound correct, but again, my brain is pretty fried at that.
No worries. So we'll probably have time for one more question. So Ashley, who raised her hand, and after that, for everybody, we're gonna take a group photo and a wave for our Instagram story, just like last time. So make sure to stay for that as well. I love your background, Ashley. It's very in the spirit, holiday spirit.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm a game developer. I've been doing game design. I got into UI and UX, especially because one of the games I released actually had really bad UI and UX. So I was looking for ways to really improve it. And so I actually just been looking for different resources and stuff. And I was kind of curious what kind of people you follow. Do you have any recommendations as far as that goes? And my last thing was for doing tests for games. Do you know any particular tools that are good for it when you're trying to run different UX tests and such? And most of it's limited to websites, so I'm trying to look outside if you know anything in particular. Sorry if people have asked some of these questions before.
No, that's fine. It's just hard to answer because I follow a lot of people in the UX field. So there's a lot of people out there. I would actually recommend you to join the Discord channels. So you have one that is really good. It's called We Can Fix It in UI. So if you go on my webpage again, you have all that. I think it's already on the how to the tips to get into the game industry. At the bottom, you have a few stuff in there, but it's also on my resource page. So celiahodent.com/resources. You have a bunch of the Discord channels in there. So this one is a good one where you have a lot of people discussing UI and challenges and also UX, more broadly UX challenges. I can't list all the people that I'm following for that, but they're mostly on Twitter. So I hope that you have Twitter because this is where a lot of people are. There's also a very good resource. So this one, I think it's on both pages. There's that someone put together, and I forgot that person's name, of course, but that person put together a lot of different, like a kind of library of UIs, and that's super, super useful. So you can look at all the different games and the different types of UIs for different types of systems. So it's on my resources page. That's the reason why I put everything somewhere, because I have such terrible memory. So that at least it's written down for myself and for everybody else to get access to it. So, and what was the second question? Sorry. Oh, the tools for testing. So we don't use very fancy tools for testing. It's mostly observation. But then for interaction design and UI design, the designers are going to use a lot of tools for prototyping. So Adobe XD, for example, is a fairly used tool today, but for testing, it's most of the time it's basically observation. Make sure that people can do the thing, and also we try to time how much time people are taking to solve a problem, because sometimes, especially in a test, people are going to figure it out because they're going to spend more energy to do it, because they're here with you and you ask them to do something, and they want to figure it out. So it's rarely the case when they really don't figure it out, but so that's the reason why you want to measure how much time it takes them, because if it takes too much time, it's a good indication that in the wild people would just drop or not figure it out, because they won't have the patience to try to figure it out when they're not with you and trying to help you with your product. So I hope that answers a little bit of the question, but that's observation, and so in my book I describe a little bit of the different types of tests that we do. So that's what we that is called a task analysis test. You ask someone to do a specific task, and you just look at how they try to solve that problem and how long it takes them.
Thank you, Ashley, for asking your question. Grace.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, people unmute. I had to randomly unmute you again, so that was why. Yeah, cool. We're at time, but we would love to take our group photo. So make sure you turn on your camera. I'll give you some time, a few seconds to turn on your camera if you want to join us on our group photo. And I'll count down. This will be featured on our social media as well, and also in our announcements with the recording. Cool. We have multiple pages, so I'll count down, and I also had to take on multiple computers because my current computer can only show people on camera and have multiple pages. So yeah, and then after that, we're going to do a wave, and make sure to join us on Design Buddies, because we have a game jam starting up tomorrow with prizes, and some of our judges are here on this call, and it'll be a week-long game jam. The theme revealed at our kickoff event tomorrow, and we also have a huge game UX community, a lot of game UX enthusiasts in Design Buddies as well, and Jess will also drop the link to the networking sheet and also for Design Buddies. All right, so let's take our photo soon, and also connect with Celia as well. And also check out her blog. Her blog has so many resources on there. I aspire to be like that on my blog as well, and I'm slowly working on a resource database of that as well too. So yeah, all right, I'll count down, and I'll multiple pages. So hold that smile until I say it's wave time, and it will wait for our Instagram story. All right, so 5, 4, 3. Feel free to take any object you want as well if you want. 2, 1. All right, smile. Say cheese. Say cheese. All right, time to wave for our Instagram story. So you want to dance, you want to wave. So this will be captured on our live story, upcoming shortly. Follow us at design.buddies.
We need music to do that. Come on, we need some rock and roll music.
Yeah, we do.
Right, let me see if I can pull something out really quickly on my phone. What do I have here?
Go ahead.
Oh, hang on. Well, I mean, that's not rock, but let's see. Oh, okay, that's not okay. Of course I don't have something really well. Okay, let's do Trame, because it's good music still, so it's gonna dance a little bit.
Let me unplug so I can hear it through the Instagram story too. So all right, now we can hear you through the story. Ready, set, wave. Ooh, buddy.
Hanging in a trim bay, watching people side shade, past my steps,
Awesome.
by my porch.
All right, very quick, everyone. Actually, it was multiple pages actually. So I'm going to post 2 versions. So this is our second version. All right, ready, set, go.
Oh shit.
Wait.
Church bells are ringing,
Woo.
choirs are singing,
Yeah.
while the preachers groan, and the sisters moan.
All right, cool. All right, thank you all for coming. For Design Buddies guest Celia, we're gonna stay for a few minutes for debrief. This concludes our event, so you're welcome to go now. Make sure to connect with us and Celia on Design Buddies to continue this conversation here, and join us at our game jam tomorrow, and check out Celia's blog for a lot of amazing resources for your career, and also more about game UX and everything about that. And follow Celia on Twitter. She tweets a lot of resources too.
Yeah, so sometimes I rent, but I mean, it's another story.
It's okay.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Yeah, stay positive and test negative.
That's a good one. It's catchy.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I just, it took me a while to understand it and then it clicked. And I was like, oh. Hey everyone.
Hi everyone. Our event is over. We're just doing a quick debrief. We love you, but there's nothing